Okay.
Good morning, good evening, Shavua Tov to all of our watchers currently watching us right now and those who are going to be checking out the recording later. We want to welcome the wonderful Rabbi Nagen to our show today. Jason Kaplan, thank you so much for organizing and making all the arrangements for yet another amazing Beit Abulafia session. We have loads to talk about, but I want to toss it over to you really quickly, Jason, to give us a little bit of background, and then we're going to dive in because we want to cover as much as we can.
We do. Thank you, Shoshana. Shavua Tov, everybody. Rabbi Dr. Yaakov Nagen, Executive Director of the Orator Interfaith Center, Division of Orator Stone. He also heads its Blickl, Institute of Interfaith Dialogue and Beit Midrash for Judaism and Humanity. He is a rabbi at the Yeshiva of Otniel and has written 10 books about Jewish spirituality, Talmud, and interfaith relations. Welcome, Dr. Nagen. I'm reading from his book, which we are going to talk about, book 1 and book 2. Excuse me, I have it here. And we're really excited to have such a prolific author and leader in interfaith. So welcome, Dr. Yaakov Nagen.
Happy to be here together with all of you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Nagen, we were talking right before we came on. Apologies. I might go back and forth between doctor and rabbi. I hope that's okay with you.
Yaakov is fine.
Okay, thank you. Before we really start to dive into things, you like to share a quick little intro first before we get kicked off.
So simply every talk, I always begin by noting today's date, because there's something remarkable about today's date. It never was, and it will never be again. The date is unique, which means today is unique. And if we could truly, truly feel this in our heart, then it could help us live today to the fullest. So without further ado, in Hebrew, Hayom Chai Shvat Taf Shin Pei Hey Tieshnat Pidyon HaShvuyim Ze Hayom Asa Adonai Nagila V'nismachavo. All the rest is commentary.
I love it. I think we should all start every day that way. That gives us really good mindful perspective, I think. That's fantastic.
The truth is, in Judaism, that is how you start every day, because the 12 words we're told to say when we awaken in the morning could also be a meditation about today. In the Moda Ani, we thank God for giving us returning us this morning our neshama. Now, since we say this every day, it means our thanking God for getting our neshama back is for today. This is what we have in life. This is modani lefanecha, thanking God for giving us today.
I love it. It's good. It's always good to have that reminder, though. Thank you for starting us off in such a positive way. That's really special. Okay, I'm about to ask you an unfair question because in just like a minute or two, I want you to share with us your background, your decision to go move to Israel, your journey spiritually that took you to where you are now. So again, I realize that that's not super fair to you, but do the best you can and give us a minute or two of some of that context.
Well, Hillel had to tell everything on one foot, and he came out with a one-liner.
Okay.
So I grew up on the west side of Manhattan. And my feeling was that was FOMO. I missed out on the great chapter of the story of the Jewish people, because the return to the land of Israel, the birth of Israel, the return to Yerushalayim, 2,000 years we're waiting, and it happens. And I was born a generation too late. But more and more I realize that I didn't miss out on it, and none of you missed out on it, because what really counts is not these events in themselves, but what we do with them. And certainly living to Israel as an epicenter for the Jewish people, for the world, is saying, I want to be part of this cosmic global story. So that's what brought me to Israel.
That's amazing. And then your spiritual journey to becoming a rabbi, give us a little bit of that.
I would say love story in 2 words.
That's so nice. Okay,
but
that's so
not with being a rabbi, as I said, just call me Jack or Yaakov, but the study of Torah, the teaching of Torah, and being connected with people is one thing that rabbis get to do, as opposed to maybe if I was an Ivy scholar, academic scholar, which maybe I'd have less interaction with many people.
Yeah, I can feel your passion over Zoom here. It's pretty remarkable. Okay, this is going to be great. I want to transition a little bit, and then Jason, after Rabbi Nagen shares his experiences that I'm about to ask him about, I want you to jump in. So Rabbi, I want you to talk about interfaith, and were you drawn to these ideas and these methodologies and the things that you're researching and learning about from life experiences? Is it really from thinking about spiritual journey and a spiritual matter, or is it a combination of the two?
Wow. Now, this is challenging to keep it short.
I know.
I feel it was a journey with many steps, each leading to the other. I confess that probably I kind of just like people, and then I made a ideology out of it. But it's many steps and many stories. It didn't start with Jewish-Muslim relations that I focus on now. In fact, in many ways, it started with encounters with Eastern spirituality. Journeys to the East and dealing with Kabbalah and its interplay with whether Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist, reading the Upanishads in different translations, and discussing the infinite, the Ein Sof, and the Brahman, the infinite expanse. So it was a lot of stages till I got back home to the Abrahamic religions.
Okay. Jason, you've done a lot of studying also. You live all these things, try to daily. You share the things about interfaith experiences. Talk a little bit about yours.
Well, it's exciting to have Rabbi Nagen on because I've done a lot with music, and my original journey was being a secular or conservative Jewish going into the Orthodox world. And then before that, I studied Taoism and Buddhism and Hinduism. I tried to do anything else but Judaism because I thought, Judaism is not for me. So after you have the go on the bar mitzvah circuit, you're like, I don't know. Everyone seems to be trying to get out of this. So in American Judaism at the time, it was like bar mitzvah and out. So I was thinking about, I think I'll look at some other religions. So mine was more like I was trying to pick one at the time. So it's very interesting to pick Judaism and to go into the Orthodox halachic world. In New York, I kept those connections up, but I would really visit them in a music way because I went to some interfaith organizations and events that I wasn't really keen on. It seemed to be, the idea was we're all nodding and agreeing that there's one God, and then they would say some extremist crazy thing and be like, wait, whoa, time out. So what's exciting for me is that as Rabbi Nagen said, in the rabbinic world or the academic world, I really stay in the music world. So what's really special about our guest today is that he's going to outline for us ways that he's really written about and delved into and I would say struggled with and shown us a path on the intellectual level. Whereas I've been on the music level, I've met with the Sikhs and Muslims, and we all play music together. But I don't think that's enough. And so to have a scholar of Rabbi Nagen's caliber to talk to us is really exciting today.
Yay. Okay, we're going to merge all those things as we continue on this conversation. Thank you, Jason. Rabbi, I want to hop back to you. Share with us a little bit about your connection experiences with Kabbalah and Sefer Yetzirah, and maybe even Rabbi Abulafia also.
Yeah. So I feel for me, something I've been teaching for more than about 25 years. First year students in Otniel, I teach them Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. Some raise eyebrows, but I feel this is really the base, the foundation of so much of the later Kabbalah. And in many ways, I feel that medieval Jewish philosophy is often very abstract, and it is the Kabbalah that I think talks to people much more than anything else. So I start with my first year students, say, no, we start with Kabbalah, then when you're really advanced, maybe you can figure out what's happening with this medieval philosophy. Now, but we know that Rabbi Abulafia, he was able to really combine both. His two great loves, one was Sefer Yetzirah, very central to his philosophy, and the other was Moreh Nevuchim, and which I think is important to realize how artificial boundaries are between Kabbalah and philosophy. And it goes both ways. Just like Rav Beit Abulafia, the great Kabbalist who focused on Sefer Yetzirah, was a big fan of the Guide of the Perplexed of Maimonides. Rav Saadia Gaon, a famous Jewish philosopher, rationalist from the 9th century, he wrote a very famous commentary to Sefer Yetzirah. So I think it's these divisions are artificial, and I think in essence, in one word, the essence of Kabbalah, it's all about connections.
Amazing. I think that sums it up nicely too. Jason, how do you see Abulafia and interfaith sort of commingling, or do they?
Well, he's been very inspiring to me because, as Rabbi Nagen said, when I first got involved with Kabbalah, a lot of the rabbis said, we don't study the Moreh Nevuchim. I'm like, what are you so scared about? I mean, it's just it's a philosophy text. I think you can handle it. And like, no, you can't do this, can't do that. And, we don't go outside of our boundaries, and we're really Jewish, and the Jewish soul is only a certain way, and the non-Jewish soul is another way. And it's like, I can't handle that. So for me, Abulafia is the universalist who says everything's connected. We're all creating the image of God. There's a connection to everything. If there's an idea out there that has some value, I can engage in it. I can talk about it. I'm not scared of it. Let's talk about it. We can talk about Buddhism. They don't have a God, but they have a nirvana. What does that mean? I don't know, but we can talk about it. That's what Abulafia means to me. And that's what I hear from Rabbi Nagen. And so it's really exciting for me, because when I've sat with so many different humans with so many different backgrounds, my approach has been, I don't really want to hear about your particular theology. I mean, I'd rather just play music. But again, as I'm going to state a couple of times on this theme, is that I've come to the conclusion that's just not enough. And I wanted to partner with somebody who would come in and say, well, here's what I've done theologically and intellectually. And you'll see it in his books that we'll talk about, just how thorough Rabbi Nagen is. So I think Abulafia is an interfaith connector, bridger. But to really hone it and fine tune it, that's what we're talking to Rabbi Nagen about.
Okay, so then let's dive a little bit deeper. You mentioned permutations. And so, Rabbi, if we're talking about how some of this is abstract, but really Kabbalah is about connections, so then how would you dive in a little bit deeper and imagine Kabbalah and these letter permutations that Jason is mentioning and the shalom peace aspect of all of this?
Okay, so I think a teaching very explicit in the Zohar and in Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, but the roots are really in Sefer Yetzirah. It's contemplating the word shalom, that I always feel translating shalom as peace means it got lost in translation. That in Sefer Yetzirah, there are three letters that are the primeval letters, or the mothers, empowering the feminine side of reality.
Right.
And these include the dialectic between the shin, representing Aish, which is fire, and the mem, which represents mayim, water, fire and water. And shalom, which in addition to connection of the word shalom to shalem, which means complete, begins with the letter shin, represents fire, and ends with the letter mem, representing water. So already the Zohar writes, and Rabbi Nachman develops, what is shalom about? It's all about connection, taking opposing forces and connecting these forces to work together to create something new. Where tragically, some of Western conceptions of peace is don't kill each other, which certainly would be a really good start. Or peace is we're here, you're there, we have nothing to do with each other. But the deep shalom that emerges from Sefer Yetzirah is saying, we want connection. And this is part of the essence of my interfaith work, to say it's not about tolerance. Tolerance is saying, I really would wish you didn't exist, but I'm willing to tolerate you. If someone tells their wife, I'm willing to tolerate you, I think she'd be justified to throw him out of the house. But well, we're looking not for toleration, but true fraternity, which is about connection, saying that the world is more beautiful that we have me and you. It's more beautiful. You're a blessing. I hope to be a blessing to you. You're a blessing to me. That is fire and water merging together. That is true shalom.
This is amazing. This is what I love about doing these on Sunday, is that the amount of positivity that we are gaining from all of what you are sharing today, like really starts us on this week in such a positive light. So we're grateful. Thank you again for being here. I want to go deeper into this connection aspect. I think it's safe to say that we can connect to Hashem in different ways. And there's meditation and there's davening and prayer and other tefillos and tehillim. How would you say Torah learning that you connect? And is it all of the above? Is it each person sort of chooses their own path?
So a major theme of my book, Become Blessed, Jewish Spirituality Between East and West, is one of the great messages in Judaism is the ability to connect different forces. If sometimes the East and Western divide is between doing and being, doing, let's change the world, make it better, and being, let me be present in reality as is, showing how Judaism incorporates both of these dimensions. One simple example would be 6 days, do work, fix the world. 1 day, Shabbat, just be. And also in the experience of the divine, this is very true. There are the two basic conceptions of the divine. One is Abrahamic religions focus a lot on a personal God, Father in heaven, or the lover in the Song of Songs. It's a personal God that you have a relationship with. Whereas their Eastern religions sometimes focus not on a personal God, but on something much more abstract, the infinite expanse and the emptiness. Where in Judaism, both languages are used. We talk about God as Father, as lover, but also certainly in the Chassidut and Kabbalah, we talk of God also as the infinite and see all of existence as a manifestation of the divine. But the challenge is to realize how to realize that both are true. There are two levels of reality. There is one level of reality, as Rev Kook puts it, one level of reality is world and God is two. There's the world, there's God, there are two. And this is what allows a relationship, prayer, God, the experience of God guiding our lives. But there's a deeper level of all is one, that all is divinity. So go beyond the 2-minute answers, but this is something we deal with deeply with our students, which is in the Kabbalah is referred to, just to give a title to it, Zeranpin and Erechanpin. The small face of God is the personal God, detached from reality, but interacting, which allows the relationship. And Erech Anpin, the big face of God, is the infinite, that all is one, all is God. Both are truths, and Kabbalah teaches us how to integrate in our religiosity both of these levels.
I love this because two things can be true at the same time. I want to jump back a little bit and talk more about our interfaith experiences. And Jason, I want to bring you in too. I want you both to share, since we like to shine the light, we like to bring the positivity. Rabbi, that's what you're helping us with. So I want you both to share some of your more uplifting experiences you've had when you've worked with interfaith groups in whatever aspects you do. Rabbi, go ahead.
Wow. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big Sikh fan.
Okay.
And I even have a theory about why Jews and Sikhs get on so well together.
Okay.
One of it is, I say, in some ways, they're grandchildren of Judaism. If we could see that Islam and Christianity, in some way, are children of Judaism, and with children, sometimes you have complex relationships. The Sikh religion, and as also the Druze religion and the Baha'i religion, all three of them are different forms of offshoots in different ways, direct or indirect, from Islam. So I say this makes them grandchildren, and this is how we can get along. Also, which is important, critical, I feel the great danger and the source of violence in the world is the idea of exclusivity, that of imperialism. If you don't have my identity, you're damned to hell, and I must annihilate you. This is the source of the endless suffering even now. Judaism, this is not the Jewish approach, which I argue extensively in my book, Show in God Shall Be One. There's a vision of humanity together calling the name of God, but not that everybody being Jewish. The Sikh religion shares that, and that's why my visits to Amritsar very much resonates. And if I get another 2 minutes, I could tell about some of those visits.
No, keep going. Yes, keep going.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
sure.
recently I was invited to Amritsar to celebrate Guru Nanak's, the founder of the Sikh religion, his 555th birthday. That's the new 30. And in general, it's, first of all, the Golden Temple really is the one temple that I feel connected to in India, because it's so much reminiscent of our temple. It is truly a house of prayer for all people. Everyone is not only invited, but there's even a free dormitories for non-Sikhs. And they don't try to convert you. You come and they respect you as is. And the heart of the Golden Temple in Amritsar is not a statue, but just like our temple in the Holy of Holies, a book. We have the original Torah in the Holy of the Holiest, and they have the original copy of the Guru Granth Sahib. And speaking there at the birthday, I saw an example of how religions could bless each other. I had an insight of the deep understanding of a verse in the Torah based on Guru Nanak's teaching. There's a beautiful verse that talks to my heart of in the Torah of humanity calling together in the name of God, serving God one shoulder, which clearly means we have to give hugs to each other because then we have one shoulder. But when speaking to the crowd of thousands of Sikhs, I said, what the verse really means, which certainly Guru Nanak would teach, is that humanity calling together in God's names. Because in fact, God is one, and that's critical to understand that. But realizing that God has different names, in Judaism has different names, in Islam, and the Sikhs, certainly many names, realizing that complexity. God is one. It's that oneness that allows the unity of humanity and life, but the one could have different names. So I rephrase the pasuk, calling together in God's names, in God's names.
That's amazing. I'm glad you talked about that because we were going to ask about the Golden Temple. So I'm glad you shared a little bit. Let me hop back over to Jason because you have lots of beautiful experiences with members of different faiths. You even have a song. It's so interesting, Rabbi. I don't know if you know, but Jason, your song basically is the title of the words that he was just saying about unity and one God. So obviously this is all meant to be. So share the name of that song with us too. And then talk to us about some of your really exciting experiences you've had with other faiths.
Yeah, thanks, Shoshana. I mean, the Nachshon's Leap is our band, based on Nachshon ben Aminadav's leap into the Yam Suf, into the Sea of Reeds, I think we'd say in English. And so I was in Yeshiva University studying to maybe be a rabbi. I was studying, and then I thought, well, I'm in New York City, and I'm talking about God all the time, but I spend most of 95% of my time with Jews. So it is the universal God. So my short story is I started taking a subway ticket to around the world, which you can do in New York City. And the first people I went to were the Sikhs. There's a story about my high school band having the Sikh symbol that we picked as our high school band symbol. We didn't know. And I was in a cab with a Sikh driver, and I said, "Oh, you've heard of my band?" And he said, "No, sir, this is my religion." I was like, "Oh my." So that's how I learned about the Sikhs originally. And I went to a Sikh temple in Queens, and I said, "Can I speak to the president?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And so he sat with me, this very nice man. I don't remember his name was Mohinder Singh. And we sat, and I said, I'm struggling. I'm in a rabbinical school, and I really spend all my time with Jews. It's the universal God. He said, thing is, you're my brother, and God created us, and we're part of a human family, and God is perfect, and religion is trying to be perfect. It's not perfect. Only God's perfect. I was like, wow, I've just never heard anyone say that. So I went to Long Island. I met Sikhs there. Long story short, they said, "Would you like to learn music and sing in our services?" I said, "We don't really do that. We're Jewish. We don't sing in other people's services." I said, "Well, what does it say?" And he said, "It says, be a good person." And I learned it in Punjabi. Agya baya kal kita bachalayo panth. I learned the whole thing. I think you're supposed to say it with a head covering. I'm not going to say the whole thing, but those are some of the words. And it was me and my Baha'i friend Gilbert Smith, and a Muslim friend. And we sang in Sikh services. It was the most remarkable event of my life. And I'm coming off the little platform, and someone comes up to me and says, I have a question for you. I said, oh, here we go. They're going to ask me to convert. And she says, how do you know Punjabi better than we do? Welcome, sir. And she's laughing. So that's what I feel with Rabbi Nagen is, for me, the Sikhs is, to me, the closest I've ever felt to um, brotherhood, sisterhood of all humans, as Jews and Sikhs, just you be you, I'll be me. There's one God, and the main thing is the book. It's not a person, it's not a place or a thing. It's really the book. The book takes us to God. So we have Nakshan Leap, and we released the song Unity, One God, One Human Family, to sing about this and make it kind of a mantra of God's names, repeating that. And so that's been the interfaith thing. And so it is remarkable to have this time together to hear from Rabbi Nagen again, the study and the direct talk about the text with people, and we'll hear more about it from the books that we're going to present and talk about. But those are some of my interfaith experiences.
That's amazing. So then, Rabbi, do you think then that we do have like sort of a path to make these stronger connections with the Sikh people?
I think there's a potential for partnership, especially because much of the Sikhs out of India live in places with large Jewish populations. The US, Canada, Australia, England, part of it because India was under the British Empire. So those who left, it was generally English-speaking countries. In fact, there was a large group of Sikhs, leaders who came to Israel about 15 years ago. And there's some very moving insights also about feeling that they're one of the new religions. What wisdom could they learn from one of the world's oldest religions? And one thing that really, really touched them was Shabbat. That with Sikh religion, because it's not based on revelation, it does the aspect of rituals and certainly having a special holy day and the experience of Shabbat and what that does for cohesiveness of the family, of together, the parents blessing the children, singing together, being rooted in the place, in the time, was an eye-opener for them. But I feel in so many ways we're similar. We're both persecuted minorities around the world. Also, we have impact well beyond our numbers. So I feel Jewish Sikh fraternity could help us in a very large world with a lot of negative forces. So yes, so we should stand together.
Yeah, agreed. I also love me some Shabbos, so I'm right there with them. I totally get it. It's the best when you could turn everything off and actually have conversations with the person in front of you that you're talking to, and all the other reasons too. Okay, let's talk about your books. There are several. Why did you choose book publication as the method you wanted to use to convey all of these wonderful messages? There's lots of different mediums that you probably maybe tap into, but this seems to be the one that you're running with, having written so many. So why is it that your choice?
Well, the truth is, every book is created as a result of many years of teaching. And once I have the book, it gives me a database that allows me to use it in endless amounts of encounters. So I feel it's not, the book is not the beginning, it's not the end. It's a part of a broader process. Often I think books are most important for its primary reader, which is the author, because it pushes you to formulate and think. Thinking about I always feel there's a stack of trays. And sometimes in your one-on-one conversation lectures, you're always on that highest tray, but you never get down to deeper trays. By having to write a book, having systematic, thinking it out, it gets you to much deeper trays. So it's a fruit of many years of encounters and teaching, but then you use it all the time. And so it's a part of a much larger picture of the book.
Yeah, no, I understand. Jason, do us a favor. Will you hold up the two books that we're going to be chatting about now, if you don't mind? So we've got Be Becoming Blessed. We've got Hashem Shall Be One, two of your fantastic books, Rabbi. So I want you to maybe talk to us a little bit about them. And then Jason, I want to hear your thoughts because I know that you're a big fan of both of them. So Rabbi, sort of share with us, they're thematically similar, but they're also very different. So walk us through those ideas there.
Okay. Different, but of course, again, connected.
Right.
Jewish spirituality between East and West, it's structured based on the parshiot of the Torah, but each becomes a jumping board for Jewish spirituality. And a major theme is that issue about doing and being, fire as the doing, water as the being, or as sometimes I put it, if the East talks about we talk of Judaism is about shalom, meaning we have the which maybe is representative and connected to water in many ways, but we have that shin of the fire, shalom. So it deals a lot with that duality of doing and being. In fact, unsolicited, the book got translated into a number of languages. I wrote it in Hebrew originally. It was translated into Chinese, Italian. And if I could do some show and tell in wake of the translation into Chinese, I was invited by Chinese to give a lecture tour. And they even made 2 porcelain cups. They had it representing Israel, the Israeli flag blue, the Chinese flag red. But for me, this was red is the doing, which is, of course, the workers, the color red. And blue of the Israeli flag is the sky, the sea, about the being, the spirituality. So I spoke about China. First of all, Chinese and Jews together were 1/5 of the world's population. But together, to forge together are if you call for a rabbi to come from Israel, it seems that all your progress and doing and amazing the amount of fast trains and skyscrapers, but you're looking for something which must be the spirituality to connect up with doing.
I love this. So a lot of times on these calls here, we ask for ways for our guests to make what they're sharing with us practical and something that we can relate to in our everyday lives. And that little demonstration, I think, really sort of solidified the ideas that you're sharing. That was fantastic. Thank you. Jason, you've read some of these books. Tell us about them. What do you like about them? What connected you to them? What drew you to them?
Yeah, I really like what Rabbi Nagen writes. It's more of a conversation than a textbook. So you feel like he's talking to you and taking you through his adventures through the East. So that is be become blessed. And it's based on the Parsha. So we're coming up to Mishpatim, and there's a whole piece on Mishpatim here, which I had the page of. And so you can kind of learn with the Torah portion, and you can learn about East, West, and Judaism and his view of the Code of Hammurabi, or the different laws of the Near East and Middle East in his own life as a rabbi. And coming up in Mishpatim, we have justice for animals, we have justice for plants, justice in Revelation. So it's the idea of revelation that we had from Har Sinai, and how does it play out in our daily lives. And then for me, this was a really, really also very important book. Just came out in English, God Shall Be One, because I've really struggled with, as I've talked about before, I've really struggled with some of the doctrines in the Kabbalah Hasidic world about the non-Jewish soul, and that it's different from the Jewish soul. And it didn't really make sense to me, and I don't think it had to be something that I had to accept as Torah. And it's an opinion, and they may be right, but here it goes through source after source after source. It is so well researched with him and his colleagues. Some of the colleagues are Rabbi Rosenblatt, Dr. Asaf Malach. I believe those are the other 2, Rabbi Nagen. And they just do such a wonderful job of going through so many great, great rabbis that you might not have heard of because they're in certain circles and it's not as popularized, about taking care of our neighbor, loving people who are not Jewish, a relationship with Christians in Europe, and the positive feelings towards them. And so we have had a terrible history, and we've recently had, unfortunately, people repeating that history and doing things in the name of God that it's just unspeakable. And so you can understand why certain rabbis would write, hey, we just have nothing to do with them, and they have a totally different soul, and they're not human like we are. I can understand where that comes from, but I've seen so many other rabbis say they're wonderful people. Certain people use their free will for evil. Certain people use it for good. All humans are created in the image of God. So it's just such an important book, even if we're going through the trauma and of October 7th, we don't have to write that into our doctrine about every single human. Those humans that did that should be cast into Gehenna for as long as they need to be in there, or whatever needs to take place. But for good people who are created in the image of God, we have so many sources in Judaism that Rabbi Nagen's collected with his colleagues that is so beautiful. It's really a path forward.
That's beautiful. Rabbi, did you want to jump in and say something?
So maybe 2 points.
Please.
I feel something which I've also written extensively, and I think in Be Become Bless, among other places, there are 2 critical issues here. One is, what I see as the central teaching of the Torah, is we all have our shared humanity and shared divinity. Sometimes that the Torah, more than teaching about God, it teaches about our people. The concept that we have a common ancestor. This is the shared humanity of all of us. And the concept of all of humanity in the image of God, and as I've written elsewhere, the concept of children of God, all are children of God, or as the Pasuk says, and we read recently, B'ni B'chori Yisrael, the Jewish people as firstborn, it means that there are other children as well. But so one issue is on the human level, shared humanity, shared divinity. In the book, God Shall Be One, it goes another step, because we could talk about a shared humanity, but then the question is, how do we view the religiosity of other people? Now, Judaism, it's not everything goes, because not every religious expression is validated and legitimate. I mean, there have been some, but to say that there's some common universal truths that we believe in, and within that framework, there are infinite possibilities to develop a religiosity of connection to God, connected to each other. And it's a blessing that we have this variety, showing that this is the Jewish approach. In fact, every day, every Jewish prayer ends with the prayer Aleinu Shabeach, that ends with a vision of humanity calling together in the name of God. So the question is, what does this mean? It doesn't mean and it clearly doesn't mean that everyone's going to be Jewish, which never was a Jewish vision, but it means a possibility of partnership with humanity, even with different religious identities. So that's the focus of that book. But there's a sensitive point that, Jason, you raised. I think it is worthy to respond to. There are certain, not all, certain Kabbalistic sources or Hasidic based on that have negative statements about non-Jews. I feel, number one, in terms of core messages within the Bible, within the Talmud, there's no evidence of anything on an inner spiritual difference. But I even asked a major Kabbalist once, how does he deal with these statements? And he gave a very fascinating, telling answer that, again, this isn't something genetic or hereditary, but there's a living reality, or the divine is manifested. Or the Rebbe of Kutch said, where is God in the world? Where you let him in. And the manifestation of divine in individuals, but also in cultures, is something which is dynamic. So to say that there's something hereditary would certainly be a negation of the critical statements, or the Talmud says, why are we all created from one person? So no one could say, my father is better than your father. So as a genetic, eternal statement, it would be in direct contradiction to formative sources. Rather, it's saying that there could be realities on an individual level, but also on a general cultural level, that the inner spirituality exuded and reflected by certain cultures and society, and not only individuals, is reflective of some negativity, which is not ignored, certainly by people who are being massacred and tormented in the name of certain cultures. You're muted, Shosh.
You're right. I am muted. The host is muted. Epic fail. Jason, did you want to jump in?
No, I love that. I think that's the kind of the ways that I was hoping people could resolve some of these statements. But this is the things that we as Jews and rabbis, I feel, are responsible to talk about, because as I was coming up in college, studying some of these texts and saying to rabbis, whoa, what is this thing about non-Jews being over there and we being over here? Like, well, you don't understand this and that. I'm like, I'm in college. I mean, try me. So it was kind of swept under the rug. I did not appreciate it. And I felt something could be done better. And so that is, instead of getting upset at certain models, I just thought we can offer something better. And this is what I've wanted to hear. There are cultures and groups and people who gather together in large numbers and make bad decisions and create cultures that we shouldn't say, oh, well, we're all part of one God. We cannot sweep it under the rug that way. But also certain statements in our traditions that say non-Jews don't have the same souls we do. I don't think we can sweep that under the rug. So I really like what Rabbi Nagen is saying. I think it's a very nuanced point of we have to look at reality. There have been some nations that have really gone the wrong direction, and we have to say that out loud, and they've blocked the light of God, and we don't want that to be repeated. We don't want certain ideologies to be repeated. I don't want more communism, systems that block out the light of God and individuality. That's the reality. So I love that answer from him. I really do appreciate it. It's the first time I've heard it, actually, and I think it's very well said.
Yeah, good. Agreed. Okay, so both of you have been touching on the past few minutes here about the challenges that we're experiencing in the world. So let's sort of give the 3,000-foot view. October 7th, country issues all over the world at this point. It seems violent and chaotic and polarizing. So Rabbi, based on your research and just your own ideas of where you are in life right now, share with us your thoughts about what is happening in the world for the immediate right now, and then what you're expecting long term.
Okay, so I feel there are two challenges, and not one, and one force, positive force, which is also sometimes ignored. I feel the challenge is certainly the Jewish people, certainly in Israel where I live, one adversary is a certain branch of political Islam. But what I feel empowers, what I see ultimately with my extensive encounters with Islam on a global level, as a minority within Islam, what empowers them is neo-Marxist theories of decolonialism, anti-Westernism, secularism, which has empowered certain minor forces within Islam way beyond their real role within Islam. And this has been a blasphemy and leading to endless suffering of Muslims themselves. And this truth must be spoken. The victims of the global anti-Semitic demonization of Israel are primarily the Palestinians, who keeping alive the hope of certain extremist political Islamic groups to annihilate Israel. Without that global support, I think we would have achieved reconciliation. And one vector showing that this isn't a pipe dream are the Abraham Accords. This week, I'm flying to Abu Dhabi, and I feel countries such as Morocco, the United Arab Emirates, and others, and within all the countries, even those that are officially in conflict, there are many voices that keep alive a hope and possibility of an authentic Jewish-Muslim religious fraternity based on a vision that there's a great story that we all have a part in, and we are partners in this story, and there's a place in the vast Middle East for Jews, Muslims, of course for Christians, and to have our legitimacy. So I feel this is the vector fighting the radical political Islam, but also the global neo-Marxist delegitimization of the Jewish people that has empowered those forces to the detriment of the authentic people that are living here, including particularly the Arabs, who are suffering because of this global obsession of singling out the Jewish people.
Yeah, we're all
I hope
nodding.
that ends up being optimistic and not pessimistic. I'm not sure.
Understood. But we're
I
all
guess
nodding.
the negative parts you all know, so that there's a positive element here that might be the positive note.
Well, no, but for sure there is, and we're agreeing with you, because a lot of us, I think, have been living it. Jason, with your interfaith band and other connections that we've made with other religions, it is obviously 100% possible. Jason, you've experienced it. This is the direction we should be going in.
I love what Rabbi Nagen is saying. I think there is this neo-Marxist thing, and then the West, they have a lot of power of influence and cameras and media. And unfortunately, they have this resistance theory that they apply to jihadis. It's so ridiculous. And I thought on October 8th, no one would buy it, but unfortunately, people bought it. So for
George
me,
Orwell,
yeah,
2024.
exactly. It was unfortunately George Orwell 2.0, if we use today's language, and somehow it worked. Um, so I recommitted myself to studying Abulafia and was able to reach 8, 9, almost 10 musicians around the world, including Sufi Muslims, who said, we love Abulafia, we love studying him, and we know you don't want us to be Jewish. We just think he's a great saint. And we're going to apply this to music, and we're going to talk and develop this. There's a prophecy that the world will call on God in a pure language. Would that be math or music or some type of language you can all agree on? I think it's coming around the corner. So I'm very optimistic about the future. I think the thing that I think is if you can cut the supply chain to jihadis of new recruits, if young people who would normally go and be recruited by them through all the brainwashing techniques they have, if they can learn music and meditation and Kabbalah and Sufi Islam and say, hey, this is a lot more attractive than those idiots over there in Hamas, we just have to cut the supply chain of new recruits. That's the main thing to me. Just you cut them off and you cut all their energy and people. And you do that with a much more positive thing. And I just want to add one more point is in the Middle East and around the world, you have to be the strong horse. You can't come to people and say, I'd like to have peace and be meek. This doesn't work in the Middle East. You have to have the strong horse. And so interfaith needs to be the strong horse. We have to say this is more powerful, more exciting, more beautiful than any jihadi or any form of extremist ideology. But particularly in the Middle East, you have to say jihadis are weak and pathetic and they live underground. And interfaith is beautiful and above ground and it's for strong people. So that's why we need to highlight Rabbi Nagen and all of his work, although he doesn't need us to highlight him. But I mean, for our people that listen and hear about music, I do want something stronger, which is books and writing and intellectual heft from great rabbis. And that's why we're so blessed to have Rabbi Nagen with us.
Oh, thank you for those warm words. And just as a closing, let's ask, I feel it's not only stronger, it's more authentic. I feel part of the crimes of the West is that extremists who are the greatest blasphemers of their respective religions are called fundamentalists, as if they are the authentic expression of the fundamentals of their religion. And then you have these soft, reform, modern moderates about it. I feel the opposite is true, that we are following the will of God, the words of our holy books, and they ego. Another wordplay in English, God and ego. They both have G-O, go! But God has a D, ego has an E. And in the ABCs, D comes for E. Egoistic, idolatrous ego has led perversion of the holy books, perversion of the will of God, and we are not reformists, we are not moderates, we are going back to the will of God, as every surah in the Quran begins, except for one, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the merciful and compassionate. B'Shem El Rachum v'Chanun in Hebrew. Those who live according to God of mercy and compassion, they are the authentic ones. Those who are the opposite, they are blasphemers and violators of the holy texts.
I think
So
that's
I'm
great.
a fundamentalist.
Very
Yeah,
well said.
yeah,
Very well said.
you really broke it down for us in a way that I think we can relate to on our levels that is not as amazing as your research and all the books that you've written. So we're super appreciative. Before we wrap up, we want to get one more question in that's sort of a lofty question. And then, Jason, we're going to share the books one more time so people know where they can get them and the link also.
There's a link, yes.
So, Rabbi, we want to know if you think that every human, Jewish or not, has a divine soul. And would you say that Jews are chosen because we're an elevated people or because we have an elevated mission? None of the above, some of it? Share your thoughts.
I think it's about the mission. We just read in the Parsha that we come to the Mount Sinai and we're told that we will be a Mamlechet Kohanim. We are a nation of priests. The role of a priest is to take responsibility and to serve. It's, in general, the choosing of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov was to bring blessings to the world. It's a mission of God's saying, focusing on a certain person, a certain group, to be designated with responsibility, role and responsibility. Or as Levinas said, chosenness means demanding more of yourself than you demand of others. And if so, halavai, it would be wonderful that every nation would feel chosen to bring blessing to the world, to demand more of themselves than they demand of others.
Amazing. That is a wonderful note for us to end on. I'm just really feeling this love and this passion that you are sharing. It's wonderful. We're so glad that you are with us today, Rabbi Nagen. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
These are always too short. I mean, we could just talk with you for hours. So we're grateful for the time that you did spend with us. Thank you. Jason, hold up the books again, if you would. And how can people get them? And I believe there might even be a special code for people to scoop them up.
Yeah, I was gonna. So we have God shall be one. We have Be Become Blessed. These are two really, really key books. And when you talk about books, we talk about their influence, and I think I would just tell people to pick up on it now because you're gonna hear about it later. So I would just say start reading now because I think this is a really great roadmap. And and actually my brother Gabriel's typing something in the chat. This parsha of this week we received the Ten Commandments. Interestingly enough, the parsha is titled after a Midian priest named Yitro. So
Yeah.
if you want to hear about the universalism of the Torah, we named it after the man who was influenced by it to believe in God. But some rabbis say he became a Jew, some say he didn't become a Jew.
No,
And either way.
didn't.
Right? So it's just an amazing thing. So I'd like to give the last closing remarks to Rabbi Nagen. We can go over a couple minutes here, but this has been a very, very special session. I want to thank you, Shoshana, for always hosting so efficiently and beautifully to get all the thoughts out and the dialogue going. I always hear from people who watch it later just how dynamic the interviews are. And I want to thank my family for joining, my mom and dad and Gabriel and Gregory Miles for joining. Especially thank you to Rabbi Nagen for joining. We've been in touch and talking back and forth, but it's not the same as going on to this and discussing and getting new ideas and his insights. It's just absolutely incredible. So once again, we're going to ask Rabbi Nagen if we can post the interview with the link and the code, if that's okay.
I'd be grateful.
Okay, great. So when we post this on Facebook and other places, we're going to put a link in to buy the book with a code to get a special discount so more people can access this book. But once again, I think that whatever our enemies do to us, we take the high road and we offer the true fundamentalist vision, which I've learned today to use that language correctly, of that there's one God and there's one human family. Jewish people are chosen to announce that and to inspire people also to feel chosen to do that. That's also something I've learned today. But with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Rabbi Nagen for closing thoughts and just thank you everyone for coming. And by the way, Rabbi Michael Beyo of Phoenix, thank you for your support and the Memphis community for helping make this interview process. And we are at ulr1.com/Beit-Abulafia. Rabbi Nagen.
Wow. I think as I started, Ze hayom, Asa Hashem, Nagila v'nismecha bo. Certainly, I think we've fulfilled that request at the beginning, and I feel no need to limit endless possibilities of what to say, and we could leave it with this.
Beautifully said. Shavua Tov, everybody. Thank you, Shoshana.
Shavua Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi Nagen.
Bye-bye.